Dear friends, partners, visionaries, and doers, welcome to Israel and welcome to Jerusalem. In one of his campaign speeches in 1913, Woodrow Wilson, who would later become President-elect of the United States, told the following story. The Queen of Hearts is chasing Alice, and after the two tire from the long, exhausting run, they stand in place, out of breath. Alice looks around and says, "We're right back where we started." And the Queen of Hearts replies, "Oh yeah, you must run twice as fast to get anywhere else." Standing in place, Wilson says, is actually going backwards because reality is shifting all the while. In order to keep up with its pace and uphold a society whose institutions suit the times, we must make changes and execute them quickly and without hesitation. That is, in essence, the core belief of progressive Judaism. That is, in essence, the core of progressive politics. This hall is full of people who practice the famous verse, "ושמרתם את חוקותיי ואת משפטיי, אשר יעשה אותם האדם וחי בהם, אני אדוני." You build communities, families, and personal lives that fully realize this verse in daily life, creating a changing and evolving Judaism that suits itself to life and doesn't insist on mechanically suiting that life to it. You see Judaism as a living organism, not a dead letter, and therefore you know that the metabolism between each and every one of your lives and the organism that is Judaism is a necessary one and must always be dynamic. He shall live by them, says the verse, and the Talmud in Masechet Yoma, he shall live by them and not die by them. He shall live by them. There's no point in rules, in halachot, no chance of justice, if you cannot live by it. There's no point to this commandment if it fossilizes, becomes heavy and unchangeable. Dear friends, you know, as I know, that for Judaism to keep its righteousness and morality, it must move forward all the time, create, ask, and grow. It should never stop, never freeze. Unfortunately, in Israel today, Judaism has become a synonym for conservatism, the opposite of progression. Can you imagine a greater distortion to our great legacy and tradition? Our great legacy knew that progressiveness and Judaism are actually synonymous. Take, for example, the Jewish port workers in Saloniki, who founded the first labor union in all of Europe, and thanks to whom the port of the Greek city in Saloniki was shut down every single Saturday. Remember, if you will, the leaders of the workers in Chicago and Toronto 120 years ago, who led mass protests in May, demanding an 8-hour workday. Those same protests which led to the 1st of May being claimed as Workers' Day. Or the words of one of the great thinkers in the religious Hachalutz movement in Israel, Nehemiah Aminach, who wrote in 1925, "The vision of the religious Hachalutz is no less universal than that of others, and no less than them does he dream the dreams of the whole of humanity. In renewing the original life of Judaism, he sees a step in human progression towards a life of complete justice and equality." Those who tell a different Jewish story, one of constrained conservatism, do so because they're afraid, because they know that the exalted ideas we are rooted in cannot tolerate practices of violence, oppression, and hate, masked as their continuation. Rabbi Moshe Amiel, the late chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, said that the mitzvah to destroy Amalek is the mitzvah to root all war from the world through the Torah. The real Judaism, the one born in Yavne after the destruction of the temple, the one that continues on throughout the world, the Judaism of life and not of fossilized rules, will never accept the exclusion of a person because of their color, gender, or race. That real Judaism will never humiliate, hurt, or knowingly harm an enormous public in the name of big words or outdated ideas. This Judaism will never threaten with violence those who choose to live differently and express the hideous ideas as done by the Beit Yehudi Knesset member Bezalel Smotrich, deputy speaker of the Knesset, just recently. Smotrich has forgotten what it means to be Jewish, and he is, with his party, trying to drag us all into living in a country where Jewish texts will be ashamed to stand. Smotrich and his friends are trying to make the large public who listen to their words and forget the important message we're fighting for here. They're prepared to burn every bridge between Judaism and the progressiveness to erase our collective Israeli identity. Only so they can continue the rampage of corruption, annexation, violence, and hate. Friends, I was invited here today to speak about the new generation of progressive Judaism. And the truth is that progressiveness is indeed one of the clear characteristics of the next generation. Always. Progressivism seeks to change the present for future. The next generation brings hope for change. The next generation holds the chance to break through the existing, to create new way of life, new norms, new beliefs. The new generation is daring. The new generation takes halakha and does as it says, walks forward. It builds on what is familiar, tried, and tested in order to move forward constantly. Friends, when I came to Knesset just 4 years ago, shortly after the social protests, I wasn't naive. I knew that politics involves compromises and deal-making. But what I found in Jerusalem was far worse than my worst expectations. I discovered that we, the public, simply do not interest the people who make decisions. I discovered a group of cynical politicians who have just one goal in mind, political survival. And everything serves this purpose. Actions are only theoretical, accomplishments only alleged, seemingly allocating budgets, seemingly giving money to just causes, theoretically, allegedly trying to solve the political crisis and the housing problem and the roads and traffic, everything allegedly. In reality, the politicians work with and for interest groups, not for us. It begins with the state budget that was captured by corrupt politicians to be transferred into destinations that most of the Israeli public have just no idea where they are, and continues with the way that the most important decisions for our security, economy, society, religion are being made. After 40 years of right-wing government, the sentence that we, the young generation, hear the most is, "This is impossible. Change is impossible." Well, this is the exact opposite of Judaism. The exact opposite of Zionism. Zionism is the greatest example of how to make the impossible possible. It's the greatest example of how to take the biggest dream, a miracle, and make it happen. And every day that has passed since I was elected, I've been trying to crack these existing perceptions. I try to take apart what is known but no longer serves us and create something new. I'm no longer willing to accept the preconceptions that Israeli politics has been based on in the last decades. Not in economics, not regarding social issues, not in questions of religion and state, and surely not in matters of security and the conflict. When they tell me that there is no money for public housing or care for the elderly, when they tell me that there is no chance to create ways to get married outside of the Orthodox rabbinate, when they explain that there is no way to stop corruption, and that's the way it is, we've grown used to it. When they tell me that there is no partner for peace, when they tell me that there is no hope, I see what the next generation must always see before its eyes. That there is hope, that change is possible, that change is necessary for a better future here for all of us. And this generation, thank you. And this generation is not a generation of people young in age. It's a new generation of leadership, of community as a nation, a generation of people who believe that habits, existing methods, and outdated narratives, all these must and should be shattered. This is exactly what the forefathers of Zionism did. They refused to accept the existing reality. They saw what was happening before their eyes, and they chose to act for change. They were not willing to wait for the times to change. Their Judaism, which they studied in the Cheder and the Yeshiva and Bet HaMidrash, evolved. It grew from Torah to Halakha, and that shaped the reality of Zionism. As a progressive movement which represents the wish of the Jewish people to build a home, a shelter too, but first an actual home, in which all of Israel's citizens are equal, to be a guiding light, really not in a pretentious and segregative sense, in an inspirational one. The tikkun we must make today is exactly the opposite of the path in which politics is heading, to lead us not to segregative and sectorial politics, but to a strong, united, and inclusive Israeli society. An Israeli society which makes room for all of the cultures and differences within it, but aspires for an Israeli identity, a new national consensus. How do we do this? How do we defeat the unenlightened, the conservatives? How do we triumph against the dark wave that is trying to take us back in time? First of all, we must unite. Progressives of the world must unite. Yes. The power of progressive Judaism in the world must lead to creating widespread cooperation in studying, in resources, in building, and in strategy. We must rebuild the camp so it can lead again. There is a problem in our progressive camp. It has been drawn to constantly dealing with the politics of identity, inclined to defeatism after 40 years of the right-wing government. It has lost its courage. It has gotten used to reacting and forgotten how to take the lead, how to create a path forward, how to courageously fight for Israel and understand it must win. We must win. We must. Most of the public is with us. They're hungry for us to unite them under a new vision, to lead with confidence, and to reinvigorate the moral stance of our Declaration of Independence. Together, we can renew the ancient covenant, as we read in this week's Torah portion. ונתתי גשמכם בעתם, ונתנה הארץ יבולה, ועץ השדה ייתן פריו. ואכלתם לחמכם לשובע, וישבתם לבטח בארצכם, ונתתי שלום בארץ. Thank you.